Records, Part 2. On the way home, Henry and Kiko debated who would keep the record. "It's a gift from me to you. You should keep it, even if you can't play it. Someday you'll be able to," she insisted. Henry thought Kiko should have it since she had a record player that could play the new vinyl discs. "Besides," he argued, "my mother is always around, and I'm not sure if she'd approve, because my father doesn't like modern music." In the end, Kiko relented and accepted it, because her parents liked jazz, but also because she realized how late they were going to be if they didn't hurry home. They walked as fast as they could along the scenic waterfront, their feet crunching on the occasional fragment of clamshell that littered the sidewalk. Hovering seabirds had dropped the shells whole, cracking them on the pavement so they could swoop down and feast on the squishy, meaty contents. To Henry, the splattered shellfish just looked gross. He was wary of the messy sidewalk, almost to the point of distraction. So much so that he almost didn't notice a thin line of soldiers near the ferry terminal. He and Kiko were forced to stop on the north side of the terminal, along with dozens of cars and a handful of people milling around the sidewalk. Most looked more curious than annoyed. A few looked happy. Henry didn't understand the commotion. "Must be a parade, I think." "I hope so," Henry said. "I love parades. The Seafarer parade was even better than the Chinese New Year's one on Main Street." "What day is it?" Kiko asked, handing Henry the record, breaking out the sketchbook she kept in her book bag. She sat on the curb and began drawing the scene in pencil. There was a row of soldiers in uniform, bayoneted rifles slung across their shoulders. All looked crisp, civil, and polite. Efficient, even, Henry thought. The ferry Kelohokin sat moored in the background, moving almost imperceptibly with the ebb and flow of the dark green waters of the frigid Puget Sound. Henry thought about it. "It's March 30th, no holiday I know of. Why are they here?" "That's the Bainbridge Island ferry, isn't it?" Kiko tapped her pencil on her cheek in confusion. Henry agreed. Looking down at Keiko's drawing, he was more impressed than ever. She was good, better than good. She had real talent. Then they heard a whistle. "It must be starting," Henry said, looking around. He saw there were more people lining the streets, frozen as if waiting for a broken red light to change. Another whistle and a long line of people began walking off the ferry. Henry could hear the rhythmic plink-plank of leather shoes on the metal ramp. In a neat row, they ambled across the street and south. Where to, Henry couldn't fathom. As best he could figure, they were heading in the direction of Chinatown or maybe Nuhamachi. The line went on forever. There were mothers with small children in tow, old people with faltering steps pitching forward in the same general direction. Teenagers ran ahead, then walked when they saw the soldiers everywhere. All were carrying suitcases, wearing hats and raincoats. This was when Henry realized what Kiko already knew. By the occasional chatter, he realized they were all Japanese. Bainbridge Island must have been declared a military zone, Henry thought. They're evacuating everyone, hundreds. Each group was shadowed by a soldier who counted heads like a mother hen. Looking around, Henry could see that most of the crowd watching was almost as surprised as he was. Almost. Yet quite a few just looked annoyed, as if they were late and were caught behind a long, never-ending train. Others looked pleased. Some clapped. He looked at Kiko, whose drawing was half finished. Her hand held the pencil above the page, a lead broken, her arm like a statue. "Come on, let's go around. We should go home now," he said. He took the sketchbook and pencil from her hands and put them away, helping her to her feet. He turned her away from the scene, putting her arm around her shoulder, trying his best to gently guide her home. "We don't want to be here." They crossed the street, passing in front of idling cars, waiting for the parade of Japanese citizens to end. "We can't be here. We need to get home." Henry realized that they were the only Asian people on the street who didn't have suitcases in hand. He didn't want to get swept up in the comings and goings of the soldiers. "Where are they going?" Kiko asked in a hushed whisper. "What are they talking about?" Henry shook his head. "I don't know." But he did know. They were heading in the direction of the train station. The soldiers were taking them away. He didn't know where, but they were being sent packing. Maybe it was because Bainbridge was too close to a naval shipyard in Bremerton, or maybe because it was an island and it was easier to round them all up here than in a place like Seattle, where the confusion, the sheer numbers would make a similar feat impossible. It can't happen here, Henry thought. There's too many of them. Too many of us. Henry and Kiko fought the crowd all the way back to 7th Avenue, the neutral zone between Nuhamachi and Chinatown. News had spread in advance of their arrival. People of every color littered the streets. Throngs were talking and facing in the direction of the train station. There were no soldiers to be seen in this part of town, no trouble. Henry found Sheldon standing in a crowd of onlookers, his sax case hanging at his side. "What are you doing here?" Henry asked, tugging on his sleeve. Sheldon looked down, startled for a moment, then smiled his cap-toothed grin at Henry. "I was just breaking down for the day. Oscar's club has been temporarily shut down after the raid, so until they open up, as soon as I hope, I'm back on the street trying to make a living, and this ain't helping business any. Henry held out the Rhodes bag with the record. Sheldon smiled and winked at him. I've got a copy myself. Sheldon put his arm on Henry's shoulder as they watched the scene. Neither felt like talking about music. They evacuated the whole island. Said it was for their safety. Can you believe that nonsense? Sheldon said. Kiko brushed the hair from her eyes, holding on to Henry's arm. Where are they taking them? She asked. Henry was scared for Kiko. He didn't want to know the answer. He leaned his head until his temple rested next to hers, wrapping his coat around her. I don't know, miss, Sheldon said. I don't know. California, I reckon. I heard they built some kind of prisoner of war camp down there near Nevada. They passed some order saying they can round up all the Japanese, Germans, and Italians. But do you see any Germans in that crowd? You see them rounding up Joe DiMaggio? Henry looked around. What few Japanese people there were in the crowds were all heading home, some of them running. You better go. Your parents are probably worried sick right now. He handed her the record. Sheldon agreed, looking at Henry. You better get home too, young man. Your family's going to be just as worried, button or no button. Kiko hugged Henry, lingering a long time. Looking up, Henry could see the fear in her eyes, not just for herself, for her entire family. He felt it too. They said a wordless goodbye before splitting up, each running a different direction for home.
Down South King the night before, she burst out laughing. She searched the lunch line and giggled almost as hard when she saw Denny Brown appear. He wore a defeated scowl, like an angry whipped mutt.